Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School Podcast. It's a casual Friday, and oh boy, are we ready to overreact here for all of you listening that are most likely experiencing the same high that we are all feeling at the moment. Fellas, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't even know how to introduce you other than how are the vibes? What a stupid question. It's Casual Friday. We're going to talk about this basketball team, the hottest team in the NBA that not named the Milwaukee Bucks. Winners of 7 in a row. Currently the 5 seed, only by a game and a half behind the Cleveland Cavaliers. The best net rating in the NBA since second best net rating in the NBA since December 4th. One of the best offenses or effective offenses in the league. You're welcome, XJ. And so many other good things to say. I'm going to do my best to make sure this doesn't get too irrational, but I cannot control what I cannot control. We start with Mr. Hardy. Shawn with a W. How you feeling?
I'm feeling victorious.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are listening on the podcast, you do not see my T-shirt that says "Victory Lap." Shout out to Nipsey Hussle. May he rest in peace. And it's victorious. And I have this shirt because, listen, if you have something to say and it works out for you, and you want to take your victory lap, you take your victory lap, and don't let anybody, whether it's within the fan base or outside the fan base, tell you that you can't take your victory lap, especially if it's a fan base that wants to say things like you act like you won a championship when they have not won a championship since Jimmy Crack Corn. But I digress. The vibes are victorious.
One thing I want to recommend to everybody, I usually do this at the end of the pod, but follow Shawn on Twitter at Shawn with a W _. The receipts you have been pulling up during this winning streak is glorious, sir. That you can't, they're muted, so you can't see them, but we're all applauding. Well, you can't hear them. We're all applauding Shawn and the behavior he has exuded on the timeline over the past couple days. Specifically, we've resorted not to laughing at the Brooklyn Nets, but to bringing up old shit with the Brooklyn Nets. And I am a fan, sir, very much so. You've been doing the Lord's work.
You know what? Listen, it's actually a lot of work. My therapist says I shouldn't be as petty as I am. But some things just chap my you-know-what. And today, I remember this gentleman said that the Knicks should tank because Scoot Henderson is better than any guard on the Knicks roster. And he said this in December. And I said, bookmarked.
No.
And funny thing, I was on the Hoop Space show today on AMP, and he was there. And I said, do you still believe this? And he said, yes. And I said, okay. And that's when I sent the tweet out. And I said, all right. And I told him, I better see Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson has to be a fringe all-star next year, or it's your ass.
Mm-hmm. So another person that has been very helpful on the timeline when it comes to laughing and pulling up receipts and exuding the behavior of petty, but also, in fact, this could go either way with XJ or Mensa, completely honest. I could literally say either one of you and it'd be fine. I'll start with Mensa, who you had said something last week before the last 4 games had happened, that if the Knicks continue this, you'll become a parody account. I think we're all getting close to that, Mensa. How are you feeling at the moment, sir?
So after the Celtics game, I really want to just take some time and just I want to give Macri his flowers because he went on there and he was really level-headed and just doing the job of a real, New York Knicks analyst. But this is the exact opposite. I'm nowhere near that. The New York Knicks are here. This is the most exciting New York Knicks team that I have seen in my life. I've been watching the Knicks heavily since D'Antoni got hired. Since 2007 and now, this is the best season. This is the most sustainable product we have. We had an 8-game winning streak and a 7-game winning streak in the same season for different reasons. I mean, come on. The vibes are, this is I don't even have a word for the vibes. The vibes are, give me one second. The vibes are uncharted. That's the word. We are in uncharted territory with these vibes for the New York Knicks. And like the two-team teaser I put in our group chat, I just want to say something really quickly. Cleveland, we on that ass. You're next. We're not worried about Brooklyn. We're not worried about Atlanta. Shout out to Shawn with the W, who says so eloquently, we are not worried about teams behind us. Right now, we're coming for that almighty fourth, and I'm ready for it. Let's go.
I love it. XJ, I don't even know how to introduce you at this point. How you feeling? How awesome is this? How you loving this?
I want you to ask me how the vibes are. That's what I want you to ask me.
So let's start from, as we always do. XJ, how are the vibes?
The vibes are currently on MDMA. That's what I would say. The vibes are basically beyond levels that you can get to through natural means, is what I want to say. So yeah, that's where the vibes are right now. There's not a word to describe them. They're on drugs. They're on X. Popped a couple X, and we're getting it going. I'm supposed to be the guy bringing the objectivity to the pod, the rationality, the data. I don't got it today, guys. I don't know what to tell you. I'm here to talk shit and and to gloat, because you never know how many chances you'll get at this. And I'm feeling great. I'm on MDMA right now.
What do we say to the god of objectivity and rationality? Not today.
Not today. There you go. Shout out. King of the East as of the last 2 months, New York Knicks. We're going to be doing some hot takes and headlines. I'm going to read a take or a headline that I've seen around the Knicks this week, over the last couple weeks, honestly. And I'm going to have these guys react to it in a way. And we'll see if there's any I missed. We can add some at the end. Head takes and hotlines is almost what I said. Hot takes and headlines is where we're going. And we start with the fact that the Knicks, since December 4th, as I mentioned, have the second best net rating. They are second best net rating, and in those 41 games, they are 27-14. And since that is half a season, we do the simple math. That is a 54 win pace, the exact same number of games won in the 2013 season. Shawn, I'll go to you first. Your reaction to how good the Knicks have been since December 4th as a whole, hearing that number, 54 win pace since December 4th.
So, shout out to one Robert Cross, because he of the originator of the hashtag 53 wins, who eloquently reminded me that on last week that they were on a pace since December 3rd, they were on a 53 win pace, and now they're on a 54 win pace. I actually brought up the schedule, and I'm just looking at all of like the W's in a row, then the L's in a row, then the W's in a row, and the L's in a row. There's a lot of discourse on the timeline and in spaces and among Knicks fans about comparing this season to the 2021 season, the We Here season. I was cautiously optimistic about that team, because I was like, I don't think that Julius Randle is going to be Larry Bird for the rest of his career. Alfred Payton as your starting point guard is not sustainable long term. Reggie Bullock, the next time he dribbles more than 3 times moving toward the basket, I'll be shocked. So there was a cautious optimism, and I always give the front office a bit of grace about the moves they made in that offseason following the We Here season, because they clearly recognized that, and I think they would have did it anyway, no matter what would have happened, but they clearly recognized, like, we can't just run this back. Mm-hmm. This feels sustainable. This feels like something that like next year, if next year is a repeat of last year, it will hurt even more, because it'll be like, we don't have to not, the next move isn't all right, let's bring in a guy to give us some spacing. The next move is to bring in the guy. Mm-hmm. So, and if we don't bring in the guy, and I don't think this front office is going to push all their chips in the middle of the table for someone who resembles a guy but isn't really the guy, I'm not going to say any names, but that's the next deal. And once that deal happens, then now we're cooking with gasoline, as the kids say. But right now, like, this feels real. And for the first time in a long time, the Knicks have something they can build on. That's not a house of cards. That's not on old vets. Like, they got this. There's something growing here.
XJ, what about you?
I mean, I completely agree with Shawn. The honest truth is that I never believed in the We Here Knicks season. Like, I thought that was a facade fake, rat fake, as Andrew would say. I called this offense at some point. No, I never believed in it long term. I didn't think it was sustainable. It's kind of like it's like that weird situation where, when there's a guy on your team who's a great shooter, and every time he gets an open shot, you like assume it's going in. When Randall and RJ got those open shots in that season, those guys both shot 40% from three.
Mm-hmm.
I never believed that those shots were going in. And that was just representative of how I felt about the team. It's like, man, they're really performing well, but I don't believe it. Like, I just don't. This team, I believe in it. I believe in it. I think they'd win. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with the hot takes. I think they win a 7-game series with a few teams that they might get matched up against. Yes, I'm worried about their offensive scheme being exploited in some very specific ways, but I think their talent is good enough to overcome that. How I think about the last kind of half a season worth of games is that some of the big differences we've seen, yes, Randall's playing a few more minutes per game, scoring out at an outrageous output, Brunson a few more minutes. The guys that we're really seeing the most substantial difference in minutes and time and output, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is playing 13 minutes more per game than he was at the initial part of the season. That dividing line between December 4th, when they went to the 9-man rotation, and before that, Quentin Grimes is playing 13 more minutes per game. Quickley's playing 8 more minutes per game. That is where a lot of the positive production that we're seeing is coming from, in addition to Randall increasing his output, maintaining his efficiency while playing a few more minutes per game. But I think, to me, most of it is coming from those guys replacing guys like that. I'm not going to say their names here because I don't want to bring down the vibes in any way, but guys who were in the rotation who are not anymore. But yeah, so that's really what it's the big takeaway for me is that we're seeing a real substantial difference, given that we're seeing guys like Quick and Grimes play a ton more minutes. We're seeing the output from Randall and Brunson just continue to increase. I think Brunson is shooting 45% from three during this streak, as opposed to 33% from three in that first part of the season, which is completely insane. Like, you don't see bumps like that just come out of nowhere, like a few games in, and then just sustain for the rest of the season. So yeah, I feel great about it. I feel like it's sustainable, and I want to see this team in the playoffs. I'm really not afraid of anybody right now. Got to be honest.
You're not afraid of Milwaukee?
No.
Dude, I love it. The vibes. So hold on. Before I get to Mensa,
I'm on ecstasy,
you start with this.
Andrew.
Okay, fair. Okay, fair. Maybe I'll ask you later when we're sober. Mensa, are you afraid of Milwaukee? And I know who else. I know you're not afraid of, and it's anybody behind us. Shout out to Shawn. But how are you feeling about the fact that this team is? I say the headline about what this team is since December 4th, and then where are you looking at with the standings right now?
Milwaukee scares me. I'm not.
Okay, thank you. I haven't lost since January. XJ, what are you doing?
I have so much respect for Giannis, and that team is like finally healthy. And they're 15 games in a row? Like
16.
Like 16. And we're at, excuse me,
7.
We are at 7. Look, we're both doing great, but Milwaukee is, to me, they would have won the championship last year if Chris Middleton didn't get hurt. So I want to leave Milwaukee alone. Listen, if we're going to stay in this 4-5, let Boston get to the first seed so we don't have to worry about, yeah. But I do want to say really quickly, since December 4th, 2022, which is the day in question, Emmanuel Quickley has played 40 games, started 10 of them, averaging 30 and a half minutes a game, shooting at a TS-EFG split of 587 and 554, offensive rating of 125, defensive rating of 116, which I believe gives him a net rating of +9. Wow. Emmanuel Quickley has been a superstar for the New York Knicks. I don't think there's any getting around that. Obviously, I think when we were doing a couple podcasts ago, we were talking about whether, like we were looking at like teams' big threes at the time. Mitchell Robinson was in that big three. Now it is unequivocally Emmanuel Quickley as the third best player on this team. And on nights, he's honestly, Emmanuel Quickley overall has been the third best player on the team, but night in and night out, Emmanuel Quickley's been one of the top two performers on the New York Knicks. Like there's no getting away from that. I want to say really quickly about Emmanuel Quickley that when we were having the conversation about big threes, it came up that XJ liked, I think me and XJ agreed on this, that Tyrese Maxey is not better than Emmanuel Quickley. And personally, I look at Anthony Simons and Tyrese Maxey, both undersized shooting guards taken in the 20s of an NBA draft. Emmanuel Quickley taken 25th overall, I believe. Yeah, 25th, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, taken 25th overall in the same draft as Tyrese Maxey. To me, I always compared him to those guys because they all kind of fit the same demographic. Emmanuel Quickley is head and shoulders better than both of those basketball players. And it's not a conversation unless you unless you, one, don't know ball, or two, root for the Philadelphia 76ers or Portland Trailblazers. Emmanuel Quickley has been phenomenal. And they got to back the Brinks truck up for Emmanuel Quickley. I think that he is right now what I would have wanted RJ Barrett to be. He's a two-way stud. He plays both ends of the court. He deserves nomination for Sixth Man of the Year. And I don't know why anybody is talking about, like, if we're talking about the New York Knicks' success, it's because Emmanuel Quickley found himself and the Knicks allowed him to find himself. So I think that's where I'm at.
So I'm actually going to combine a headline I had in the future with one that it's topical now, and it's that Emmanuel Quickley is now 4th in Sixth Man of the Year odds. XJ, how ridiculous is that to you for Quickley Sixth Man of the Year being 4th? And would you listen, Mr. Betting and Sweating, who's currently a grand up for the year? Where would you advise people to take that bet?
So we do Betting and Sweating. We make a Knicks prop pick before every game. We're all doing really well on the season. Mm-hmm. I don't really bet in real life. It's just not something I do very much. I'm about to bet real money on Emmanuel Quickley winning the Sixth Man of the Year award. Actual dollars. Because okay. I'm so glad this conversation came up and this is one of your topics, Andrew. Mm-hmm. Let's just take a minute to look at how some of the players in contention for Sixth Man of the Year stack up to Emmanuel Quickley. I put out a tweet earlier today saying, legitimate question, who are the Sixth Man of the Year candidates to people on the internet, on Twitter? And I got a few names. I got Brogdon, I got Norman Powell, I got Bobby Portis, I got Emmanuel Quickley. Okay. So let's take just 5 minutes or less to stack them up in terms of impacting the goal of a professional basketball game, which I believe is to win the game. I think that's the intent of a professional basketball game, if I'm not wrong.
That's actually correct.
I appreciate that, Shawn. Okay. Confirmed. Great. Let's look at some reputable impact metrics that do a reliable job of assessing this very thing, how players impact winning, right? Mm-hmm. Let's take Basketball Index's LeBron metric. We all see Basketball Index's beautiful charts and summaries of their data on Twitter. What do they say about impact as far as how these guys impact the game? Brogdon plus 0.26. Very good. Nice. Brogdon's an excellent player. Norman Powell minus 0.79. That doesn't actually mean he's a bad player, but he's solid. Portis plus 0.4. Better than Brogdon, according to B-Ball Index's LeBron, a very solid impact metric. Emmanuel Quickley plus 1.3, not in the stratosphere of these other guys. Okay, fine. It's one impact metric. It's just data. Come on, guys. It's just data. Let's look at other ones just so we can see if there's some consistency here. Let's look at Darko or Daily Plus Minus. This is another very reputable impact metric. Brogdon plus 0.48. Very good. Nice. Portis plus 0.54. Again, very good. Norman Powell minus 1.25. We're seeing a really bad trend for Norman Powell. I'm sorry. Emmanuel Quickley plus 0.79. Again, leading the pack. This is okay. Guys, chill. This is just two. They're just two. It's just two impact metrics. There's other ones out there.
This is amazing. Keep going.
There's other ones out there. Chill. Let's relax. Let's just calm down. Take a step back.
Sorry, guys.
Hold on. He's in the middle. He's cooking. Let him cook.
Yeah. Let's take Mensa. We're just going to take a step back really quick. Okay, let's look at 538's Raptor in case we don't believe in LeBron, we don't believe in Darko, whatever. Brogdon plus 0.7. Again, very good. Powell minus 1.2. Powell, I don't know that you should be in this conversation at all anymore. Portis minus 2.7. Raptor doesn't seem to like you. You know who Raptor likes? Emmanuel Quickley plus 2.5.
Oh my God.
Dominating this impact metric talk, which is the kind of talk that I'm here for. We all know that. EPM. Listen, guys, EPM is my favorite impact metric. It's been validated. There's research supporting. It's one of the strongest impact metrics as far as prediction and predictive value. If EPM says that all these other ones are wrong, I'm going to give credence there. So let's just take a step back. Let's chill out. Let's calm down.
Drum roll, please.
Let's just take a look and see what we're working with here. Brogdon minus 0.3. Mm-hmm. That's weird. Minus 0.3. That's very strange.
Shocker.
Really shocking. Powell minus 1. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just need to stop saying Powell. Portis minus 0.2. Emmanuel Quickley plus 1.0 in the top quartile of the NBA in EPM. You guys, I mean, I'm sure this is just data. It doesn't mean anything. We got the eye test. We watched the game. But if as insofar as this matters at all, Emmanuel Quickley is clearly far and ahead the number one candidate for Sixth Man of the Year and should be, where the voting cast today, unanimously the Sixth Man of the Year. None of these candidates are close. I don't know what the betting odds say. I'm putting all my money on Emmanuel Quickley. And if the basketball writers who vote for these things don't know what they're talking about, I'll be broke. But I'm just going to assume that they do. So I rest my case.
Hold on. We just gotta everybody unmute. That was amazing.
Shawn J.
Quickly putting it to bed.
Back to the Knicks before we move on to some other headlines. I'm gonna ask you guys the question that John asked me, John, and Jeremy. Wait, John is himself. Asked me and Jeremy at the end of the pod. Who are you afraid of the most in the Eastern Conference as a first round playoff matchup? And I'm actually just going to leave the door open. We already asked about Miami. We already asked about Milwaukee, excuse me. But if you had to then rank like most afraid of to least afraid of, go through some of the contenders. If you want to get to like 5, go ahead. Mensa, we'll start with you. So Milwaukee's first. And then if you want to go like 2 through 5, of teams you're most afraid of come playoff time?
I'm only afraid of Milwaukee.
Okay.
I think we can beat Philly.
So Philly, would they be second?
Yeah, just because Embiid, but at the same time, that Embiid stuff gets canceled out because they still have one James Harden who shrinks in the playoffs. Okay. So if I had to rank it, I would say Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, and Cleveland. Cleveland puts no fear in my heart. Like no fear in my heart. You know, like the heart monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Like
just
kind of flat.
Not even a little bit flatlined. Okay.
Nope.
Gotcha.
I am not worried about them at all. I don't believe that their core is anywhere near as good as our core. I'm not. So really, it's just 3 teams that I guess you could say I would be worried about. And in order, it's going to be Philly, Boston, and in order, it's going to be Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly.
So if you had to put a team behind us ahead of them, who would it be? So it's honestly, really nobody but Atlanta.
Out of respect.
Yeah.
Forget about Atlanta. We're not worried about Atlanta.
Excuse me. Okay.
Atlanta, no, they're not a good basketball team. And if I can't go to Magic City because I have this opinion, so what? Oh, wow. I'm not. If there's any team that I'd be worried about beneath us, it's Miami, and that's because playoff Jimmy Butler is a real thing. and he turns it on. And I'm not sure if we have anybody who can turn it on to the same level as him. But that team is just they're not constructed well. And honestly, oh man, if we had Miami in the playoffs, RJ Barrett would go for 45 a night because we know Tyler Hero's guarding him. So yeah, no, Miami, I guess, would be the only team underneath us that I would have any kind of worry about.
XJ.
I'm not afraid of Miami personally. I think for that reason that Mensa said, I think we'd play Tyler Hero off the court. I don't think he'd be able to stay on the court for a full 7-game series. I think Bam Adebayo is highly overrated. I'm just not worried about that squad at all. I would say my real answer is I'm not afraid of anyone. I would not like to play Boston. So I know the Knicks just came off of beating Boston pretty soundly. I'm worried about teams who rebound the basketball extremely well on the defensive end, because I think the way that teams are going to scheme in the playoffs, at least they're going to try this, is to try to switch everything and crash the defensive boards and keep the Knicks off the offensive boards and let the Knicks be the suboptimal effectiveness, efficient offensive team that they are as far as how much they score in the half court on the first shot. If you can hold the Knicks to one shot, they're not a top 5 offense in the NBA. They're probably more like a top 15 offense in the NBA, which is still really good, but not good enough to advance in the playoffs. So I'm most concerned about teams who defensively rebound extremely well. Those teams happen to be Boston at the top, Miami number 2, and Milwaukee number 4 in the league, and then Cleveland number 5 in the league. So it's like all of the teams that the Knicks may have to play. So I think that's going to be something to figure out. Am I confident that Tibbs is going to be able to kind of figure something out on the fly in one of those series? Not quite. So I'm not afraid of any of these teams. I think the Knicks can compete with any of these teams. I'm a little concerned about the scheme challenges that might come into play with some of these teams that rebound extremely well. So my ranking would be Boston and then Milwaukee and then Cleveland. Miami, not at all. Yeah.
Boston ahead of Milwaukee. It sounds like, to be honest, the team you're most afraid of is the Knicks. That the offense that you've had doubts in their efficiency all season, that it will come back to haunt them.
I just want to be proved wrong that not that their offense is like a parlor trick or anything like that. That is much too strong and not my perspective, but just that there are holes in the scheme that can be exploited over a 7-game series. And I want to see that not come to pass. So that's my concern.
Okay. Shawn.
I do share the same concern about when Tibbs has to adjust, how fast can he do it? Because he will adjust, but it takes him a while.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So I ranked them. I have Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Miami, Cleveland. Boston, because they have 2 guys who can go off for any time. Like 2 wings who can go off at any time.
Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum.
I was just thinking that's way too much respect for Grant Williams. Way too much respect for Grant Williams.
Jeez, I like Derek White, but my goodness, man, I'm not that afraid.
Okay, Sam Hauser's all right. I'll give you that.
True. Blake Griffin used to be an MVP candidate. You're right, Shawn. I agree. Fine, put some respect on Jaylen Brown's name. Go ahead.
It's funny you say that. Lest we forget that the opening game of the 2021-2022 season, Jaylen Brown walked into MSG and dropped 46 in our head top.
I'm afraid of a guy that cooked Evan Fournier. Who won't play that game?
Before we act
losers,
before we act like he's Andre Roberson with a flat top, let's just settle down. or braids. He has braids now.
Flat top Andre Roberson is nuts. I'm not gonna.
Let's settle down. Number 2, I have Philly, and listen, James Harden is a playoff loser. The fact that he's already dropping breadcrumbs about going back to Houston because he has not been in V Live as much as he'd like. I personally have lots of respect for Joel Embiid, and I'm with Jonathan Macri, who says one day Joel Embiid is going to be like, F this, I'm destroying everyone. And just our luck, it will be the time that we play them in the playoffs. But whatever. I have them at number 2. I have Milwaukee at 3 because I have said this our defensive scheme is a perfect match for what Milwaukee does offensively, because they're not good at 3-point shooting and their best player just wants to get into the paint, and our head coach will die before he deprioritizes rim protection. So I'm saying we can win, not saying we're going to win, but to actually point, I'm not scared of anyone, but just do not be surprised if it's 5 minutes left in the game 7 and we're down 3 in Milwaukee. Right? I have Miami ahead of Cleveland because, hey, listen, F Heat culture. I hate it. I can't stand it. I hate the Heat. But playoff Jimmy is a thing. And those clowns, it's all of a sudden like, oh, look, Max Strus is 7 of 8 from 3 in the first half. And yes, we can play Tyler off the floor. But between Eric Spoelstra, who's a genius, and just the things that, like, Mike Schur was on the Bill Simmons show podcast, and he was just like, I hate Miami because they have no business being wherever they are, but then they just turn it up. And then finally, Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland. The reason my fear of Cleveland is non-basketball reasons, their agenda and narrative and ESPN and Fox Sports 1 reasons. But we have playoff experience is a thing. Listen, we got guys that were there in 2021 and remembered what it was like. And so Cleveland, yes, they have Donovan Mitchell. Listen, Donovan Mitchell's gone past the first round once, and that was against Oklahoma City when Russell Westbrook self-destructed. I don't care that he shot 50, 40, 90 in the YMCA in Orlando. Listen, he can get off. He can get all his points, but guess what? Isaac Okoro and Eric Mobley are going to have to hit wide open threes. And if they don't, they're in trouble.
Just an important correction. He got past the second round a second time when they were the 1 seed in the bubble season. The bubble shortened season. And then somehow managed to let Terrence Mann kick them out of the playoffs. That game 6, a Kawhi-less Clipper team,
like them. Reggie Jackson and
Pat Bev, they just went 5
Reggie
hours.
Jackson and Terrence Mann got them out the paint.
Can I say really quickly?
Go ahead.
4-5 match. I don't care if the Knicks are 4. I don't care if the Knicks are 5. And we have Cleveland. We're winning in 5 games.
In 5 games.
We will beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games. I do not believe in Cleveland at all. And we have the one guy that gave Donovan Mitchell bucket after bucket after bucket. They almost lost that series last year, the Utah Jazz, to a Luka-less Dallas Mavericks team, who, in my opinion, is a lottery team. The New York Knicks will give the Cleveland Cavaliers a whole lot of work. Evan Mobley's chest is not ready for Julius Randle. Listen, I'm not afraid. Listen, I'm going to put real money on it if we play them. Knicks in 5.
Knicks in 5. Okay. Well, there is a reason I did this little exercise and put this on the list of headlines, which I'm about halfway through without even trying to be halfway through because we're really rolling through this. For most of this season, the competition around us has been like, well, are we as good as Toronto? Like, can we play with Washington? You know, I think we're better than Chicago, but then they beat us in that one game. And then it became, well, okay, Atlanta, like maybe we can get out of the play-in at Miami, like it's Heat culture, yada, yada. And that entire exercise was Boston, Philly, Milwaukee, Cleveland. Those are the teams we are in the conversation with now. And that is, I think, the new perspective that Knicks fans now have and honestly should have because of how they're playing lately. We are not looking up at them in a distant, far off land at the top of the East. We are part of that conversation. And there is a world that the next time we record Casual Friday, we will be ahead of one of those teams in that conversation. So we'll see how the next 7 days go. Before we move on to Jalen Brunson, a conversation that I know I have to have because I'm the guy that defends the 2013 season and won Carmelo Anthony. The simple question, this is the best Knicks team since blank. Fill in the blank, XJ. This is the best Knicks team since blank.
This is the best Knicks team since the 90s. I don't know what year to say, but obviously in my opinion, it's just going to come down to that Carmelo season, that Raymond Felton, Carmelo Anthony 2012 season.
So are you comparing like who would win a game of like a 7-game series, or comparative to the year that they played in, you know? Like compared
That's a
to
good
the rest
question.
of the league, which is how I'm doing it. You know?
That's a good question.
Because
I was thinking about it.
With this team would be
who would
Clyde
win.
and Willis Reed and all these other guys that never shot a 3-pointer in their career.
Yeah, that's a really good context, and I appreciate that, because with that in mind, yes, I think relative to their contemporaries in terms of the teams at the time, that Carmelo team was probably better than these Knicks. At this point, do I think there is latitude for this Knicks team to be better relative to the rest of the league? Yes, I do. Actually, I think I could see this team in a conference final, and that wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't blow me away. I wouldn't be like, I could never expect it. I mean, not from the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have expected it. From this point, I could imagine it. But again, at this point, yes, probably that Carmelo-led team was better just because they were up there the entirety of that season as far as competing with the best. And I thought they had a legitimate chance to make the finals that season. So yeah, I would say the best since, I don't know if it's 2012 or 2013. I hate how the NBA does it with the like split years, but
yeah, 12-13. Yeah.
12-13. Yeah, I'd say that given that context, I think it's very important. I would probably go with that team with a slight edge, just relative to the competition at the time.
Mensa, you said something earlier that this is the best team of your lifetime that you've been watching since the 90s. I obviously have a special place in my heart for the 12-13 season. Can I make a concession? This is the best I've felt about a team.
That's what I meant.
Okay, then is that fair, Mensa, to be like talent wise or whatever you were in your league? There's a different conversation, but as far as how I feel about said team, this is the best I've felt about a team since the 90s.
Yeah. So I'll address both. Definitely, this is the best I've felt about a team since the 90s because the 13 Knicks were old. A lot of that came on the back of Jason Kidd's first half performance of that season. Priggy Smalls, my hero. I think 37 minutes that we got from Rasheed Wallace. We had a great Tyson Chandler. Like what Tyson Chandler was doing then, Mitchell Robinson's doing right now. Mitchell Robinson may be, I think Tyson Chandler, yeah, he was maybe like 8-9 years younger than Tyson Chandler was back then.
Yeah.
But that Knicks team had one superstar. Say what you want about Carmelo Anthony. And let me not say a superstar because the way I look at it, you have to be in the first tier of basketball players in order to be a superstar in your in any given year. And I think LeBron James was pretty much head and shoulders over Carmelo Anthony that year. There's no getting around that. But right underneath, like the way people look at Devin Booker, SGA, and all those guys now, that was Melo back then. For those who are younger than me and probably didn't get to witness that season game after game the way I did when I was 19 years old. But this team is deeper. Melo never had a number two. J.R. Smith was like the de facto number two on that team. Mm-hmm. We have an Emmanuel Quickley who can match up with that J.R. Smith, who also won Sixth Man of the Year. We have Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, one after the other. I was so excited about Iman Shumpert and what he would eventually be. He became a champion, but for the Cleveland Cavaliers, not for us. So, yeah, I think this team is more talented. I think as far as like 1 through 9 is just that we don't have a Melo on this team. We could, but we decided to go for Dwayne Washington. We'll leave that alone. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this is the best I've felt about a New York Knicks team. But just because, and even though this Knicks team, I believe, is more talented 1 through 9 than that Knicks team, the original Knicks tape, I would have to say that just having Carmelo Anthony was all the difference. And if Tyson Chandler wasn't sick, if Kevin Garnett did not literally tear Carmelo Anthony's labrum in Game 5 of the first round of the playoffs, the New York Knicks would have beat the Indiana Pacers and would have been in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think that we don't give that season enough footnotes, but honestly, we got it was really bad in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like our luck went left.
So someone was talking to me yesterday. They were in the good old DMs, and I'll just say it. Kevin Danishevsky has an agenda to get me to admit that this season is better than the 12-13 season. He's also on a Jalen Brunson versus Carmelo Anthony agenda that I just thank you, Fred Katz, for preaching the gospel the other day. And what I said to him was that season, that team had a ceiling of the conference finals and underachieved. And what I'm willing to say about this year is that this season, for a while, I thought it was the first round. I still want to see it happen that they get to the second round, but probably a ceiling of the second round and might overachieve. And that's the best thing I could say about it. And I'll hand it over to you, Shawn. But is that a fair characterization about it? That the ceiling realistically is probably the second round with the chance that they overachieve?
Yes. I think the conference finals talk is a little bit too much. Because to get to the conference finals, you're probably going to have to beat two of Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly. And I think you can get one of them. Well, probably. I mean, yes, you can.
One of, because you can get Cleveland.
You can get Cleveland.
You just got to beat one of them.
Yeah.
Two of them is the finals, which America, you ain't ready. That's all I'll just say. Okay.
So I think a first round, get to the second round, and if they overachieve as a conference finals, that's a proper way to put it. I'll say this, and I love the 2013 season because it came out of nowhere. I also, I'm like XJ, I didn't think it was sustainable. And Lord knows,
you mean the 21 season, Shawn, right?
The 2013 season. The 2012-13 season. It wasn't sustainable because, like I said, we're depending on Rasheed Wallace and Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin and whatever.
Gotcha.
And everyone knows how I do not hold the Carmelo Anthony era is high regard as others, because I actually saw my team get to the second round more than once. With that being said, please let us not disrespect Carmelo Anthony by comparing him to Jalen Brunson. I think the 2013 team is better because of the top. Between having a guy who was third MVP and the defensive player of the year, I think that puts them over this team. Now, this team is more sustainable and they have a longer runway and a longer future potentially. But this is that 2013 team in that season was better.
I just want to say, I think it's kind of interesting how none of us are talking about the We Here season team. That's we're glazing over that, and
it fizzled out. So
I totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel strongly that I never even. And as Mensa
just put two words in the chat. Alfred Payton.
The two words that indicate why, but I just never felt like that was sustainable, and I actually think I didn't enjoy that season as much as a lot of other people did. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting how that's an afterthought that season.
Where I was personally in my life, and I'll just be open about it, my mental health, being able to just watch basketball and forget about everything else, was important. It's why I'm not just appreciative of that season, I'm thankful for that season. Watching them lose to Trae Young was humbling, and I was talking a lot of smack. I like to do that, and then all of a sudden, this is kind of over. John characterized,
and not surprising.
It was a house of cards, right? It was all this time we were I guess this is working. I guess we're just gonna hit every long two, Julius Randle, and then in honestly in one game it was this could get ugly pretty quick. But yeah, that season still means a lot to me. All right, we'll wrap up with a couple of headlines. Just flat out, just gonna say a headline. You guys react to it however you'd like to. We'll start with you, Shawn. Jalen Brunson named Eastern Conference Player of the Month.
They didn't pick him for the All-Star game, he said, and I took it personally. And that's what happened. And he reminded everyone, y'all messed up.
Mensa, Mitchell Robinson has recorded a double-double in every game since returning from the injured list. It's the first time in his career he's had 4 straight double-doubles.
Mitch, along with Emmanuel Quickley this season, has arrived. And the Knicks have been unbeatable with Apex Mitchell Robinson. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Okay. I'm going to lob this one up to you, XJ. Coach Tom Thibodeau is now 115 and 103 as a Knicks head coach. The only Knicks coaches with more wins and a higher winning percentage in the last 65 years are Pat Riley, Red Holtzman, and Jeff Van Gundy.
I think that the real comp that we need to be making with Tibbs is Julius Randle, which is really interesting to say. Tibbs was excellent in the We Here season, won Coach of the Year. Last year, I think Tibbs was absolutely terrible with his rotations, with his decision-making at the ends of games, with his ability to be flexible, to make adjustments on the fly. Just all of the things that go into coaching. I think that he just didn't perform well. I don't know if it was maybe Tibbs has started also meditating this year because he's back. He's back with a vengeance. And I'm excited to see, the meditations led by Tibbs and Randall on the Calm app coming soon because it seems to be working for these guys. So that's my comp is Tibbs to Julius Randle. Bounce back season for Tibbs. So
Mensa.
Much props to him.
Yeah, I think Tom Thibodeau simmed the season last year. I think he was playing 2K and just simmed through it because his rotations were so like you could predict. And at 6 minutes, and Alec Burks is now coming back into the game. Like you could predict it. February last year, I think we were 2 and do we even have? I think we only had 1 win last year in February. Forgive me.
3-17 stretch is what you're thinking.
The 3-17 stretch last year, we're 9-2 in February. I want to say Tom Thibodeau this season has brought it. It started off a little rocky, but he's found his groove, and it feels like for the first time since they've been here, Leon Rose and the front office are on the same page as Tom Thibodeau, as evidenced by the Josh Hart trade. They didn't go out and try to do anything fancy or bring in a young guy that they might, find lightning in a bottle with. They said, we're going to go get, and this is for the Giants fans, we're going to go get Brandon Jacobs. Because every time I watch Josh Hart, I'm like, if he was a third down running back, my goodness, first down after first down. Like he's just what they did together. And I think this is the most proud I've been of Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau together. And I was all the way out on them at one point.
Shawn.
There's a saying, I don't know who said it originally, but it's fear does the work of reason. And that usually works in a bad way because fear tends to make you make decisions that you wouldn't make. But sometimes it works the other way and it makes you make the decision that needs to be made. And I think Tom was fine. To Mensa's point, Tom was fine in his comfort zone last year, even though we just kept doing the same stuff over and over again. And this year, when the seat got a little warm, we saw the changes. So now I give him kudos because a lot of people go down with the ship anyway. But listen, and I'm the one that I've said I will drive Tom Thibodeau to JFK myself. But and I don't think he's the coach to take us to the promised land. But however, for this season, what he's doing right now, you have to give him his props.
So, Shawn, speaking of the front office, as well as Tom Thibodeau, Leon Rose, this is 3 years to the day that he took over as Knicks president of basketball operations. Yeah,
and I saw that our own Chris Persianen, tweeted about that.
That's where the headline came from, yes.
Yeah, and you know what? And listen, man, there were a lot of people who, throughout his regime, were like, he's not it, get rid of him, do the second, third. There were people saying that Steve Mills is better than him, which I believe is just blasphemous. I believe Steve Mills is a basketball war criminal because he had Kristaps Porzingis and he traded him for the mystery box. But listen, I'm looking at the roster of the 2019-20 New York Knicks. And Kadeem Allen, RJ Barrett, Ignas Brazdeikis, Reggie Bullock, Damian Dotson, Wayne Ellington, Taj Gibson, Maurice Harkless, Kevin Knox, Marcus Morris, Frank Ntilikina, Alfred Payton, Bobby Portis, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Dennis Smith Jr., and the man who was Cam Reddish before Cam Reddish, Alonzo Trier. And we went from that to talking conference finals in 3 years. Give that man his flowers. Give that man his credit. And if you are still holding out that this guy is not the man for the job, you have an agenda that you're trying to push, or you don't understand how roster construction and basketball works.
XJ.
Yeah, I just want to say for the podcast audience, Mensa, Andrew, and I all took our headphones off when Shawn was reading out the roster for that team season. So not listenable. So I'm sorry for you podcast listeners who had to endure that. We actually didn't. We opted out.
Yep.
I do want to say just about Rose, one thing that I really appreciate that I think is underrated is the ability and willingness to accept a sunk cost and a willingness to just pivot from mistakes that were made with the roster, and a willingness to just change directions, to shed second round picks, to get off of contracts, to be able to make a lot quicker of a turnaround. I think that's a difficult thing for front offices to do. We've seen Golden State do that on kind of like a bigger scale by trading Weissman, just saying, hey, we wasted a second round pick on this guy. Let's flip him back for the guy that we also let go and shouldn't have in Gary Payton.
Important clarification, by the way, not a second round pick.
I mean, I'm sorry. The second
overall pick ahead of LaMelo Ball.
The second overall pick.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously that's on a bigger scale, but I think we've seen this front office do some of those same things, acknowledging errors, saying we're going to just flip a second round pick, a couple second round picks and get off with these mistakes and go in a different direction. So I just wanted to give them props for that because I think that's difficult for front office to do.
Mensa.
This front office, this regime is one of the 5 best regimes in basketball. This is a regime that signed Jalen Brunson and only gave up a 2025 second round pick to do it. They turned Cam Reddish and what is looking like the 23rd or 24th overall pick in this draft into Josh Hart. And they also drafted Emmanuel Quickley. They re-signed Mitchell Robinson. They have built a home for a superstar, and they did it in 3 years. And along the way, they made bets on 2 guys, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, who are bona fide stars in the NBA right now. I think that the ground was fertile when they got here, but just because you have fertile ground doesn't make you a good gardener. These guys are excellent at what they're doing right now, and I think they absolutely deserve. I think Leon Rose deserves Executive of the Year just for who did it better than Jaylen Brown, and I'm sorry, than Freudian slip. Who did it better than Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart? Like that, those 2 right there, allowing Emmanuel Quickley to grow. They've been rock solid.
Look. Comps to 2012-13 aside, this is some of the most fun basketball that the Knicks have ever played, and that most fun I've had watching them play, and watching them last night against Brooklyn just make everything in the second half, all of that PTSD of here comes the third quarter of doom, and they ended up winning the quarter. Everything's working right now, and I'm excited to see they keep working in Miami. Any last words before we go, fellas?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. The fact that we are respectful of Miami, but at the same time, we don't fear them. And that's how, and honestly, for every game for the rest of the season, we will go into every game thinking that we should win, and it's not far-fetched. And I think our schedule is not the 18th. Now it's like the 18th hardest schedule in the league. We do have that little West Coast road trip. But this team is good, and we are prepared, and we should prepare ourselves for a lot of fun these last 6 weeks of the regular season and beyond.
Down to 20th in strength of schedule, by the way. They have the 20th most difficult schedule, so the 10th easiest, if you want to put it that way. Any last words? Anybody else before we wrap up and get out of here?
Yeah,
I can edit all. Oh, okay.
For those who don't know, I live in Florida. and I live about 5 hours away from Miami. If the New York Knicks sweep the Miami Heat for the regular season, we need to figure out something for me to go down to Miami and do and record being decked out in Knicks paraphernalia. So I'm starting to percolate some ideas. So
okay. So joining us on the post game, here's XJ live from Bankrupt Arena or whatever they call that place now.
I will go down for the game.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Deal. Mensa, any last words?
No matter what happens this season, don't break up the band. Unless you're really getting like Ringo Starr or unless Beyonce's on the trade market, don't break up Destiny's Child.
Ringo or Paul?
Ringo Starr.
Paul or John. Yes.
Yeah.
Ringo, no.
Ringo,
not for Ringo.
Ringo Starr might be the one that's available, unfortunately. But I agree. John said it last night on the post game. Strangely enough, the best thing this team might be able to do this offseason is nothing. Re-sign Josh Hart. Extend Emmanuel Quickley. Extend Obi Toppin. That might actually be the best thing that this team does is just kind of keep what we have intact and grow with it. And we'll see what it leads to. The vibes are immaculate, everybody. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. My thank you to the Casual Friday crew, who XJ mentioned will all be on playback on Friday night watching this game against the Miami Heat. Good Lord, please win this game because we're on a bit of a winning streak right now on playback, and I'd like to keep that going. You can follow all of them on Twitter. If you're watching live, their handles are underneath their faces. If you're listening to this podcast, their handles are hyperlinked in the episode description, so please check them out there. You can do the same for me, but if you really want to help me out, head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. We are up to 15th in the iTunes charts for basketball podcasts. We are ahead of Gilbert Arenas. Apparently, we're the ones with no chill. And
we should be because this takes a trash.
Yeah, and I can't tell you I've ever listened, but I will take your word for it on that, Shawn. Thank you, everybody, seriously, for all the support that we've received over the past couple of weeks. Getting to experience all of it with all of you has been amazing. And until next time, thank you for listening. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game with us on playback, and I will speak with you soon. Peace.